This idea is not specific to just Escape from Tarkov, but it's something I've wanted to talk about for a little while being in the space of this game, seeing it grow and become more of what the developers want, and at the same time, seeing as how the game gets bigger, what that looks and more importantly feels like on our hardware. Anyone who has played this game for any length of time knows that Tarkov is a demanding game on your PC. Knowing from experience, for years I've played this game on a 1070 graphics card with only 16 gigs of RAM. And while the card was okay at getting the job done, the game still looked pretty and held up in the FPS department. The RAM is where things got rough. Always spawning late, especially on scav runs, it eventually got to the point where it really wasn't sustainable anymore. Plus that PC kinda just died after about 5 years, so it had a good run. Now, with a 3060 and 32 gigs of RAM, you'd think the game would be exponentially more enjoyable to play. But unfortunately, it's not. Of course, there have been moments in Tarkov's lifespan where the game was fairly optimized for what we would normally be used to, and on the new PC it felt incredible when we had one of those moments. So while this wipe was much more stable and had way less game-breaking bugs and glitches compared to the previous wipe earlier this year, I can say for sure that the performance has taken a massive nosedive. Which begs the question, is Tarkov becoming too much to handle for computers? Now, before we go any further, I just need to say right out the gate that I am a complete noob when it comes to PCs and hardware and how to optimize and overclock things for maximum performance. It's just not my forte. So a lot of what I say will be from game feel and not so much numbers and raw stats. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who are more knowledgeable on this subject than I am that watch this, so I encourage anyone who might be able to provide some extra insight to please leave comments down below and subscribe if you enjoy these videos. But right off the bat, memory leak has been a problem with this wipe since day one. It does not take a long play session before the game you will notice a dramatic loss of FPS in it. For me, honestly, it only takes 2 or 3 raids before I can visually see and feel my FPS tank. Granted, I have to play with VSync on to prevent screen tearing, which forces my frame rate to match the refresh rate of my monitor being 60 Hz. And that's not a big deal, because for me, the smoothness of the game is much higher when it's locked to 60 versus when I have an uncapped frame rate. I can see the fluctuation, and while my ADS speed might be faster, I think for myself, and honestly the viewing experience in a video format, locked 60 is perfectly fine, but that quickly goes away after only a couple raids. I've messed with my in-game settings a lot just to see what happens, and nothing makes enough of a difference other than just dropping the quality of the textures below Ultra, which I'm kind of against because I like my games to look good. At least in Tarkov's case, the weapons and the sleeves of my PMC, because that's what you're going to spend the majority of your time looking at, so why make it look like crap? But yeah, the memory leak of Tarkov has always been a problem, but I can't remember the last time it was this rough. After the first couple weeks of the previous wipe, the game ran rather smoothly for the most part, with one major exception, and unfortunately that exception has gotten worse, not better. Streets of Tarkov is a complicated beast. When it was first introduced, the map was literally unplayable, and I am not being facetious when I say that. Terrible FPS, horrendous lag and desync, and you couldn't even load into your scav most of the time, at least from personal experience. But to BSG's credit, they ironed out those kinks quickly, and Streets became a map that was playable, but you would feel the FPS hit. I got most of my time the high 50s FPS on my PMC and low 50s on my scav, which, I mean, isn't great, but I've played on worse, so I try not to be a snob with frame rate in Tarkov whenever I can. But now with the expansion, it runs better than day 1 Streets on the previous wipe, but it runs worse than 2 days before the wipe. You know what I mean? And while the map itself isn't completely at fault, the rest of the game struggling makes even trying to play the map a challenge sometimes. I still can't scav on the map when we are over 21 days into this wipe cycle. Again, let me reiterate, this is from personal experience and conjecture. I am dumb when it comes to computers, and I wish I wasn't so I could articulate this better. You might have a computer that could run NASA if it needs to, and that's awesome. So you might have 0 issues with the map. But for myself and many others, this is sadly not the case, and we haven't really been able to enjoy the map in expansion for what it's worth and what is new and popping, which is why you're seeing it now. so I can hopefully paint a better picture of what it can look like. So sadly, Streets has taken a hit, and it isn't completely the map's fault. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that is causing problems, but they all come ahead on Streets, especially the packet loss and subsequent rubber banding that you've probably seen plenty of clips of online. The game has always had these issues. Rubber banding is basically being put back where you were a few moments ago, and it visually looks like you're stuttering in place. It's something that I can recall happening a lot back in the Gears of War days for anyone who played that. Rolling up a flight of stairs only to be put either back at the bottom of them or just turned into a pile of guts by someone's Nasher shotgun. And Tarkov has unfortunately been plagued by this problem too. The only difference was that the game didn't really tell you what was going on for the longest time when it was happening. Now, in the top right corner of your screen, you'll see that icon appear every instance when rubber banding occurs, and it has been rough this wipe regarding this specific networking problem. And Streets is where I've seen some of the most egregious examples of rubber banding. It happens on all maps across the game, and it is most prevalent at the start of a raid, and then periodically happens throughout the rest of the raid. Because let's be real with ourselves, desync and dying around corners has always been a problem since day one. And the hope is that Arena Mode has figured out a way to resolve this issue, being smaller maps, less players, no AI, no items on the ground, etc. So while I could go in depth on specifically this problem, we all know it, we all hate it, let's just move on, shall we? All these issues combined make me wonder what the heck is Tarkov 1.0 gonna look like? I honestly and sadly don't think this game will become open world or have any map-to-map travel anymore. From the podcast right before patch 13.5, Nikita made a remark to a similar question and basically said if you're looking for that gameplay loop, we already have Skyrim, which could just be a normal Nikita meme in the works, but there might be more to that than he was letting on. I have serious concerns that these larger scale ideas have been put off to the wayside, potentially permanently, because it would be such a Herculean task to actually get into the game. Open world or map-to-map travel have been my literal dream for this game, but if BSG can't get around the networking issues that already infect the game, taking it to a scale of that magnitude could simply combust the game from the inside out. I'm ignorant of the inner workings of online games, but it wouldn't surprise me to have my hopes for the game going in that direction dashed within the next year. But who knows, maybe if Arena goes well and it plays without a hitch, perhaps some of that knowledge and tech could be superimposed into the regular game. But with how much tech debt Tarkov has accumulated over the years, we're gonna need a lot more than hopes and wishes for that to happen. Tarkov has gotten so much bigger in size since it has been around for almost 6 years. It's crazy what we have gotten in that time frame, and it's honestly nothing short of both impressive and a miracle. But BSG's work isn't done yet. There are a lot of issues that need tackling, and I hope they find the solutions necessary to fix them, or at least mitigate them as much as possible. Because I fear this game will eventually get too big for itself and basically be unplayable unless you have the absolute newest and greatest components for a PC. Because Tarkov is not the only game that is bloated for what modern hardware has to offer. This is very much an industry-wide problem that I would love to see resolved in the near future. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are regarding Tarkov and if it's becoming too taxing for computers, as well as any other games you play that you feel the same issues creep up in, and subscribe for more videos about a dummy's hot takes on things he isn't qualified to speak on. Hope to see you in future ones.